In this video, I'm going to be explaining how you can program a simple line follower for FLL and WRO competitions that will be accurate enough to get you from the start of the line to the end of the line and make some simple turns following the line. I'm going to be creating more competition-specific videos soon, so subscribe and like this video if you want to see more of that content. So to start, I've created a new program, and if you don't know how to do that, you can check out this video here. Line following relies on us turning to one side when the color sensor is on black, and to the other side, the opposite side, when the color sensor is on white. And by doing this repeatedly over the course of the line, we're able to eventually move the robot forward. And when we're on a turn, the robot will continue moving a certain motor until it reaches its intended color. And once it reaches that, it will stop moving, and that allows it to make the turn. So because of this, in our case, when we're on black, we want the robot to move toward the right, and when we're on white, we want the robot to move toward the left. In order for line following to work, I need to find the target value that I want my color sensor to be at. So in order to do that, I place my color sensor on black and I record the value, which was this. And then I put it on white and I record the value of the color sensor, which was this. Now to find a target value, I added the two and divided by 2 in order to get the average, which is the target value that I want my color sensor to be reading at. So if the color sensor is less than that value, then I want the robot to turn to the right. And if it's more than that value, I want the robot to turn to the left. And by doing that, it'll bring the color sensor closer to that target value or closer to the intersection of the black and the white, which will help keep the robot on the path of the line. So to begin programming this, we need to tell our motors to go at a certain speed. And because line following is generally a very sensitive type of program, I'm not going to set this to a high speed. I'm going to set it to 50% in order to create a balance of both moving fast along the line while at the same time maintaining accuracy and trying to remain as close as possible to the target value. And I'm going to set this to apply to both the C and the D motors like this. And in this case, we want to continue line following forever. So I'm going to go to the control area and I'm going to bring in a forward loop block and I'm going to place that. And then we want to program the logic of the line following. And as I stated before, you want to move to the left when the value of the color sensor is below a certain value. So I calculated 66. So I'm going to bring in an if then block. And I'm going to find my sensors, which is color. And I'm going to put in the color sensor, which in my case is attached to port E. And if you want to find out how to attach the color sensor, you can watch this video here. And then I'm going to put less than the target value, which is 66. And what we want to do is we want to stop the right motor and we want to start moving left motor. So the right motor is the D motor. So I'm going to go back to the motor section and I'm going to tell the D motor to stop. And I'm going to turn on the C motor. Now we repeat the same thing, except when the color sensor is on the white or greater than 66, and we reverse the roles of the motors. So to do this, I'm going to duplicate this block here and I'm going to move it here. And instead of less than, I'm going to say greater than, and I'm going to stop the C motor and I'm going to start the D motor. Now, one important thing to note here is that these motors are reversed in orientation. So the C motor moving forward here is actually moving backward because of the orientation that it has on the robot. So in order to fix that, I need to change this to reverse. And by doing this, this is basically telling the robot, move the robot straight. If we had it the way it was before, the C motor would always be trying to move backward and it would never reach its intended value on the line because it wouldn't be able to move forward and search for the line. So when I run this program, you can see that it's very jerky, and although it accomplishes the job of going from point A to point B, it takes a long time and it might stop the program at an odd angle because it's making so many sharp adjustments. This also increases the time that the line following program is running. And if you're doing this in a competition setting, you want to minimize the amount of time you're spending line following. You want to do it as fast as possible. So this type of program will not work well for you. So to solve this, you can reduce the speed of the motor instead of completely stopping it. So right now, in this case, the D motor is stopping, but instead we can reduce the speed. So in order to do this, we need to tell the robot to have both motors moving at all times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the start motor commands into the forever block. This means that both of these motors will always be on and we will only be changing its speed. And then now I want to set the speed of each of these motors. So I'm going to get rid of these two blocks, and I'm going to instead change it to a set speed block. And I'm going to start by setting the speed of the D motor to 35, which is 15% less than the baseline speed of 50%. And this means that it's going to be moving slower, so the robot is going to curve toward the left. And then I'm going to add another command for the C motor to maintain it at moving 50%, because we may have changed it in another area to 35%. So by doing this, I'm telling the robot, bring this one back up to 50% or leave it at 50%, depending on the situation that it's at. Now for the other scenario, I want to do the opposite. So we just duplicate this and we just change the motor assignments, and that changes the speeds that we want them to go at. And so when we run this, what we see is that the robot frequently misses the line, and that's because we've set our threshold to a very specific value. And when we do this, we're making it very difficult for the robot to find that target value because it's located right at the middle, and it's going to make a lot of sharp adjustments to get to that value. So to change this, I'm going to make this 95, which will give us a smoother line following because the value is more easily accessible, because once it's slightly off of white, the value will become 95, and that will allow the robot to make a more fast response and not veer off of the line. And so when I run this program, we can see that we have much better line following, but when we try to get it to make a turn, it tends to struggle a lot because it's still moving straight to a certain extent. And that means when there's a turn, it's only moving in a curve. And so it takes a very long time for the robot to detect that curve and make adjustments as necessary. So this kind of line following, even though it might offer a better opportunity to potentially move the speed to a larger number, it does make it very difficult to do turning. So if your robot is going to be doing turning, then you probably want to switch temporarily to the other program in order to make the turn, and then switch back to this program to deal with the straight or curvy segments that you might find on a competition map. That's all for this video explaining simple line following. There will be a proportional line follower video coming soon. Leave your questions or feedback in the comment section below.